The most faith and the most belief, resurrection. Who gets back up 3 days later after he gets murdered in public? Who gets back up under his own power?
You believe that was a real event?
Yeah, I do.
For centuries, the Gospels have told us the resurrection story. Jesus died on Friday, and he rose again on Sunday. But what about Saturday? Did something different happen? Well, Mel Gibson has the details, leaning not only on Scripture, but also on the mystical revelations of St. Catherine Emmerich, a 19th century German nun whose visions still stir theologians and filmmakers today. Mel Gibson gives a thoroughly comprehensive account of the resurrection like you've never seen. Join us in this video as we explore the revelations of Mel Gibson about resurrection. Mel Gibson, the complete story of resurrection. On the surface, the tomb was sealed and silent. But beneath the stone, beyond the reach of soldiers and swords, Jesus was already moving. Not in body, but in spirit. And he was going where no man had ever returned from. While his body rested in linen and shadow, his spirit descended into the depths of existence, into the realm of the dead, not as a ghost, not as a victim, but as a king. In ancient Jewish belief, there was a shadowy place called Sheol, the realm of the dead. Not hell as we picture it, but a vast waiting ground, a place where both the righteous and the wicked lingered, awaiting final judgment. Even the faithful, Adam and Eve, Noah, Abraham, Moses, and David, remained there, holding to a promise they had believed but had not yet seen fulfilled. And then everything changed. Into that dim realm came a light. St. Catherine Emmerich describes Jesus' descent like a flash of lightning, divine, majestic, unstoppable. He did not knock. He did not ask permission. He entered with authority, the authority of the one who holds the keys of life and death. In Sheol, the righteous stirred. Adam and Eve felt the weight of shame begin to lift, centuries of sorrow softening in an instant. Noah, who once waited for a sign of a new world, felt as if the ark had finally reached its shore. Abraham's long faith found its home. Moses no longer needed stone tablets, because the law itself now stood alive before him. And David's soul sang again. But light always provokes resistance. The dark forces, the deceivers who had feasted on fear for generations, twisting truth and holding dominion through death, rose to oppose him. They whispered. They threatened. They tried to cloak themselves in shadow. But how do you deceive when truth himself stands before you? Emmerich's vision is staggering. Jesus did not strike them down with violence. He didn't have to. His presence alone unraveled them, like fog dissolving in sunlight, like a lie crumbling the moment truth is spoken. No sword drawn, no scream raised, just unshakable, radiant authority. And in that presence, the just began to awaken, one by one. Their eyes opened wide, their spirits rekindled. They knew him instantly. This was the one. This was the promise. This was the king they had been waiting for. Not because he introduced himself, not because he declared who he was, but because his very presence was the fulfillment of every hope, every promise, every tear ever shed. And then the impossible happened. Jesus, radiant with divine light, led them out, a heavenly procession. The righteous, no longer trapped in waiting, are finally free. How true is this account? Are there facts to back these claims? Keep watching to find out. Mel Gibson's revelation of the resurrection, true or false? St. Catherine The nun who saw a vision of resurrection insists this wasn't a metaphor. This was no symbol. It was a true exodus, a spiritual jailbreak, where history's most faithful were led out like captives freed by a victorious king. The limbo of the righteous emptied, and heaven's gates, shut since the fall, swung open. The angels descended to welcome them, guiding them into glory. It wasn't a spectacle for human eyes, not a grand performance for the world to applaud. It was intimate, eternal, unseen, yet utterly real. And this part of the resurrection story is rarely told. Most films end at the cross or pick up again at the empty tomb. But here, in the silence between, the great reversal had already begun. Mel Gibson has hinted at this mystery in interviews, calling it the most important 3 days in human history. And he's right, because while the world mourned a dead Messiah, that same Messiah was breaking open the foundations of creation. He was setting captives free, souls who had died in hope but had not yet seen the light. It's a truth woven into the Apostles' Creed. He descended into hell. On the third day, he rose again, but hell, in this sense, isn't the place of eternal damnation. It was the realm of waiting, the shadowed place of longing. And when Jesus led the redeemed into glory, the entire universe shifted. History itself gained a new center of gravity. From that moment forward, time would not just be divided into before and after Christ. It would be split into before and after the resurrection. And here's where it becomes personal. This wasn't just about ancient souls, it was about you. Because everything Jesus did in those hidden hours, he did as a pattern of what he would one day do in every human heart. To descend into your darkness, to call you by name, to lead you out of fear, shame, doubt, and death. We all carry places inside us that feel buried, forgotten, abandoned. But the resurrection is not only a historical claim, it is an invitation. A voice that whispers, "I see you, I'm coming for you, and I know the way out." And it doesn't end there. As Sunday drew near, creation itself braced for what no one expected. Not the disciples in hiding, not the grieving women, not even the hardened soldiers guarding the tomb. It was the early hours of Sunday morning. Still dark, still silent. The tomb, hewn from stone, sat under the watch of 16 Roman guards. Their torches flickered in the cool wind. The earth seemed still, but not for long. Among the soldiers, according to St. Catherine's visions, was a man named Claudius, Clay, not devout, not searching, just a soldier on duty. Yet even he felt something shift. The air pressed heavy against his chest, thick with a presence he could not name. Tension hummed through the silence, beyond words, beyond reason. And then, without warning, the stillness broke. From within, the tomb burst alight. Not the flicker of a flame, not the glow of fire, but a radiance alive, pure, unstoppable. Inside, the body of Jesus, broken, bloodied, lifeless, began to rise. Emmerich's vision trembles with awe here. Christ's body lifted effortlessly above the stone slab. Gravity had no claim. The wounds in his hands and side no longer bled. They shone, each scar radiant with glory instead of pain. The linen wrappings slipped free, not torn, not unraveled, simply released, untouched by human hands. They lay folded, quiet, deliberate, like a message written in silence. I was here, and now I live. And outside, The hill itself began to shake. But this was no ordinary earthquake. It was as if creation itself recognized its creator's return. The stone that sealed the tomb, nearly 2 tons, shifted, not with thunder, not with violence, but gently, silently, as if even time itself paused to watch. But how does Mel Gibson get inspired to give this account? By divine providence, or by simply exploring the depths of his creativity? Who really is Mel Gibson? Keep watching to find out. The life and career of Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson, Gerard Gibson, born on the 3rd of January 1956, is an American actor and filmmaker best known for his mix of blockbuster action roles and ambitious directing projects. He first shot to fame playing Max Rokitansky in the original Mad Max trilogy, and later cemented himself as a Hollywood star as Martin Riggs in the Lethal Weapon series. Born in Peekskill, New York, Gibson moved with his family to Sydney, Australia at age 12. He studied acting at the National Institute of Dramatic Art, where he once performed opposite Judy Davis in Romeo and Juliet. By the early 1980s, he had co-founded his own production company, Icon Entertainment. Around the same time, director Peter Weir cast him in Gallipoli, a World War I drama that earned Gibson a Best Actor award from the Australian Film Institute. Gibson reached new heights in 1995 with Braveheart, which he produced, directed, and starred in. The film won him both the Academy Award and Golden Globe for Best Director, along with the Oscar for Best Picture. Nearly a decade later, he directed and produced The Passion of the Christ, a biblical epic that stirred controversy, yet became a massive box office success. He followed it with Apocalypto, an action-adventure set in 16th century Mesoamerica. As an actor during this era, he took on memorable roles in films such as Ransom, Payback, What Women Want, The Patriot, and Signs. However, Gibson's career hit turbulence in the mid-2000s following legal troubles and widely criticized public remarks. His reputation suffered, and his presence in Hollywood shrank. Still, he continued to act in projects like Edge of Darkness and Jodie Foster's The Beaver. A decade after stepping away from directing, he made a major comeback with Hacksaw Ridge, which earned 6 Oscar nominations and won 2. Robert Downey Jr. once shared that back in 1989, studio executives pushed Mel Gibson to try his hand at directing, but Gibson wasn't interested then. A few years later, though, he changed course. He made his directorial debut in 1993 with The Man Without a Face, and just 2 years later came Braveheart, which won him the Academy Award for Best Director. Gibson had long wanted to remake Fahrenheit 451, but in 1999, the project was shelved indefinitely due to scheduling issues. In early 2001, he was set to direct Robert Downey Jr. in a stage production of Hamlet in Los Angeles, but the plan collapsed after Downey's addiction relapse. By 2002, while promoting We Were Soldiers and Signs, Gibson revealed he was looking to step back from acting and return to directing. That September, he announced plans for The Passion, a film he intended to shoot in Aramaic and Latin with no subtitles, hoping pure storytelling would carry the film. Does this switch from secular to religious seem strange? Was this how The Passion of Christ was born? Keep watching to find out. Mel Gibson, Explorations of Religious and Spiritual Themes. In 2004, Mel Gibson released The Passion of the Christ, this time with subtitles. Gibson co-wrote, co-produced, and directed the film, which sparked controversy but became a massive hit, earning nearly $371 million in the US alone and setting a record as the highest-grossing R-rated movie at the time. After that, He directed a few episodes of the ABC sitcom Complete Savages. Gibson has also toyed with the idea of making a Viking-era movie, originally with Leonardo DiCaprio in the lead. Like some of his past projects, he wanted the film, titled Berserker, to be spoken in authentic period languages. Although DiCaprio eventually pulled out, Gibson has insisted over the years that the project is still alive. In 2011, Gibson teamed up with screenwriter Joe Eszterhas to develop a film about the Maccabees, which Warner Brothers planned to distribute. The announcement quickly stirred controversy. A year later, Eszterhas accused Gibson in a scathing letter of deliberately sabotaging the project because of alleged anti-Semitic views. He even claimed Gibson had made hateful remarks in private. Though meant as a private exchange, the letter was soon published online. Gibson fired back, saying he still wanted to make the film, but dismissed Eszterhas's script as subpar. Eszterhas later alleged that his son had recorded Gibson making several hateful rants. Still, in a 2012 interview, Gibson insisted the project was alive, explaining that the biblical rebellion reminded him of the grit and spirit of the American Western. Fast forward to June 2016. Gibson announced plans to reunite with Braveheart screenwriter Randall Wallace for a sequel to The Passion of the Christ, this time focusing on the resurrection of Jesus. That November, he revealed on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert that the film would be titled The Passion of the Christ, Resurrection. He cautioned that it could take years to finish, given the scope of the subject. By January 2023, reports confirmed that filming was set to begin later that year. Around the same time, critic Matt Zoller Seitz called Gibson the preeminent religious filmmaker in the United States. Gibson also continued pursuing war epics. In 2018, he signed on to direct Destroyer, a World War II drama about the USS Laffey crew's defense against a relentless wave of kamikaze attacks during the Battle of Okinawa. Later that year, news broke that he would direct and co-write a remake of the 1969 classic The Wild Bunch. What then is the true story of Easter like we know it? The one before Mel Gibson's editions? Let's find out. The story of Easter before Mel Gibson. All of creation held its breath. On a hill called Golgotha, Jesus of Nazareth, the healer of the sick, the raiser of the dead, the forgiver of sins, was dying. His body hung battered and broken, bloodied and struggling for breath. And then, with one final gasp, he looked toward heaven and whispered, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." These words, written in the Gospel of Luke, weren't just the last breath of a man. They were the opening of something far greater. They weren't just words. They were a signal, a cosmic shockwave, so spiritually charged that even creation itself shuddered. The ground shook, rocks split open, and inside the temple, the great veil that separated the Holy of Holies from the people was torn apart from top to bottom. Saint Catherine Emmerich, the mystic whose visions inspired the Passion and now the Resurrection, described this moment in piercing detail. To her, the quake wasn't only physical, it was spiritual. Priests collapsed in stunned silence, the clear skies growled with hidden thunder, and even Pontius Pilate, sitting in his palace, felt the shift. He sent out messengers, unsure if he was facing a revolt or something far greater. At the foot of the cross stood a Roman centurion, Longinus. He was the one who thrust a spear into Jesus' side, unknowingly fulfilling prophecy. But when the blood and water spilled onto his arm, something inside him cracked open. He wasn't a prophet. He wasn't a follower. Yet in that instant, he saw more than death. He saw truth. And he whispered the words that still echo through history. Truly, this was the Son of God. As night drew close, two unlikely men stepped out of the shadows: Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus. Both were members of the ruling council. Both had believed in Jesus quietly, in secret. But now, in the wake of his death, they did something bold. They went to Pilate and asked permission to bury him. Permission granted, they hurried to the cross. With them came John, the beloved disciple, and, according to Emmerich's visions, an Ethiopian servant, whose presence added a striking detail to the scene. Together, they pulled the nails from Jesus' hands and feet, each nail clanging against the silence like a drumbeat of sorrow. And there, close by, stood Mary. She did not wail. She did not collapse. She stood, silent, sorrowful, but unshaken. Emmerich described her not as broken, but as unmovable. A pillar in the storm. With trembling hands, they washed the body of Jesus. They wiped the dried blood from his wounds. They anointed him with oils, myrrh, spikenard, and other sacred balms, until the air itself carried a fragrance that felt almost unearthly. This was more than a burial. It was worship, a final act of honor. They wrapped his body in white linen, slowly, carefully, lovingly, not as one would wrap a corpse, but as one would send off a king. Then they placed him in a new tomb cut into limestone beside an old olive press. A quiet place, a hidden place. With effort, they rolled a massive stone across the entrance, a stone so heavy it would take several men to move. But even that wasn't enough to satisfy Rome. Pilate, uneasy and pressured, ordered 16 guards to keep watch. Torches flickered on both sides of the tomb as soldiers rotated shifts through the night. Among them, according to St. Catherine's visions, was a commander named Abinadar, a figure absent from Scripture but vivid in her accounts. He stood uneasy, unable to explain the strange stirring in his spirit. Still, for all their precautions, for all Rome's power, something had already begun. Something unseen, something divine. Emmerich writes of a fragrance that lingered over the tomb, a sweetness so delicate, so holy, that only the pure-hearted could sense it. Mary felt it. John felt it. The soldiers did not. Because this was not a sign for the world's eyes. It was a whisper from heaven, quiet as breath, alive with promise. The story was not over. What happened next? Let's see. What happened to the body of Jesus? Then came the angels, 2 of them, descending in garments of blinding white, swift yet soft. They did not storm the grave. They opened it as one would open the door to a holy chamber. Claudio, the soldier, reached for his spear, but his arms gave way. Around him, the other guards collapsed, powerless, unconscious, undone by a force they could not resist. Their shadows burned against the stone walls, etched by a divine flash. For a moment, the most secure tomb on earth became the weakest place under heaven. And then he stepped out. Jesus emerged, not with haste, not with spectacle, but with quiet majesty. His garment shimmered, woven not by human hands, but by glory itself. St. Catherine wrote that even creation responded. The grass, the olive trees, the flowers that bloom in darkness, each turned toward him, not because of sunlight, but because they recognized their Maker. But Jesus did not linger at the tomb. In the blink of an eye, he was gone, appearing miles away in a small home across the city where his mother, Mary, prayed in silence. No doors opened. No footsteps sounded. He was simply there. He looked at her, smiled gently, and spoke 3 words. "Mother, it is done." Mary, who had borne her sorrow quietly, felt her soul lift. The sword of grief that Simeon had long ago prophesied was finally removed, not by force, but by peace. Not long after, another woman came to the tomb. Mary Magdalene, alone, broken, restless. She wasn't searching for a miracle. She was searching for a body, but the body wasn't there. She came to the tomb and found the stone rolled away. The guards were gone. The place was empty. Inside, 2 angels sat where Jesus' body had once been. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" With her voice shaking, she answered, "They've taken my Lord, and I don't know where they put him." Then she turned and saw a man standing there. She didn't recognize him at first. Through her tears, he just looked like a gardener. But then he spoke a single word, "Mary." Her heart stopped. She dropped to her knees and reached for him, but he gently stopped her. "Don't hold on to me," he said. "I haven't yet ascended to the Father, but go, tell my brothers." And just like that, the message spread. Mary Magdalene ran, breathless, laughing, crying, her voice echoing through the morning air. "He's alive! I've seen him." The disciples, still in hiding, wrestled with doubt. Some couldn't believe it. Others were stunned. But Peter ran. John ran. Their feet pounded through the alleys, past the pool of Siloam, up the hill, toward the garden. John, being younger, reached the tomb first. He paused at the entrance, peered inside. The tomb was tidy, the clothes folded neatly. Peter rushed in, touched the linen with trembling hands. Something stirred deep in John's heart. He didn't have all the answers, but he believed. Peter was still torn, grief and hope colliding inside him. But soon, even he would see what no one thought possible. Because this resurrection wasn't just about life returning. It was about everything changing. If it had ended at the tomb, that would have been miracle enough. But Jesus wasn't done. How else did Jesus marvel the earth and all of creation? Keep watching to find out. Ascension to heaven. For the next 40 days, he appeared again and again, in the most unexpected places, to the most ordinary people weighed down with fear. The Gospels give us glimpses, but in the visions of St. Catherine Emmerich, those moments come alive, intimate, healing, overflowing with joy. Think of the walk to Emmaus, for example. 2 disciples, Cleopas and Simon, walked slowly down the road, weighed down with grief. Their hopes were crushed, their faith shaken. As they talked in hushed voices, trying to piece together the tragedy, a stranger came alongside them. He listened, asked questions, and opened the scriptures in ways they'd never heard before. Yet, they didn't recognize him, not until the moment he broke the bread. Suddenly, it all made sense. The stranger was Jesus. The one they thought was gone forever had been walking with them the whole time. They didn't wait until morning. Hearts racing, they ran back through the darkness to Jerusalem, bursting into the room where the others were hiding. "We've seen him!" they shouted. But before they could finish, he appeared, right there in the middle of the room. No door opened, no footsteps approached. He was simply there. The disciples froze, stunned. Jesus smiled, lifted his hands, showed his wounds, and said, "Peace be with you." It wasn't just a kind greeting. It was a declaration, a promise that death had been defeated, sin no longer had the last word, and peace was now theirs. To prove he wasn't a ghost, he asked for food and ate right in front of them. Something so ordinary, yet it anchored the extraordinary in reality. But Thomas wasn't there. When he heard the news, doubt filled him. Unless I see the wounds and touch them with my own hands, I won't believe. 8 days later, Jesus came again, this time for Thomas. He looked straight at him, held out his hands, and said, "Go ahead, touch them, believe." Overcome, Thomas fell to his knees, "My Lord and my God." And Jesus answered with words that rippled through history, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." That blessing wasn't just for the disciples in that room. It was for all the generations to come, for every one of us who would carry faith without ever having seen him face to face, yet still believe. The flame spread quickly. St. Catherine says that during those 40 days, Jesus didn't just appear to the apostles, he also visited Mary, his mother, in private. One moment she was praying alone, the next she felt him near, like sunlight pouring into her soul. They didn't need words, their hearts spoke in a language deeper than speech. He also went to see his beloved friends in Bethany, Lazarus, Martha, and Mary. True to herself, Martha hurried to bring him water. Mary, who once anointed his feet with perfume, reached out to touch his robe again. She needed no proof. She already believed. And in that house, Emmerich says, peace settled so deeply that even the birds sang differently. Then came the ascension. On a mountaintop in Galilee, crowds gathered, men, women, children, watching as the risen Jesus stood before them. He wasn't clothed in white, but in pure radiance. His final words carried a weight that would echo through time. "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go and make disciples of all nations. I am with you always, even to the end of the age." As he spoke, a cloud surrounded him, and he rose, not in spectacle, but in majesty. His feet lifted, his body ascended, and then he was gone. 2 angels appeared and told the crowd, "Why are you standing here staring at the sky? This same Jesus will return just as you saw him leave." But this wasn't the end of the story. Yet, what lay ahead for this band of followers, disciples, and believers? Let's see. The Pentecost. The disciples returned to Jerusalem, not grieving, but rejoicing. They had seen him alive. They had touched glory. But the story wasn't finished. 10 days later, on the Feast of Pentecost, everything changed again. As they prayed together in the upper room with Mary and others, wind and fire suddenly filled the space. Not just a symbol, real flames appeared above their heads. Yet, instead of burning, the fire gave them power. People suddenly began speaking in languages they had never learned. Outside, the city was crowded with travelers from every nation, and each one heard the message in their own tongue. That moment marked the birth of the church. Peter, once paralyzed by fear, now stood bold, filled with the Spirit. His words burned with conviction as he declared the resurrection, not as a myth, but as a reality that had changed everything. That day, 3,000 people believed. St. Catherine later said it wasn't just a social movement, it was a spiritual earthquake. The name of Jesus now carried power, not only in heaven, but on earth. Even Peter's shadow began healing the sick. One paralyzed man, lying in the streets just hoping Peter might pass by, suddenly felt a rush of life sweep through his body. For the first time in years, he stood on his feet. The streets of Jerusalem turned into rivers of healing, and not even prison walls could contain this fire. In one account, an angel opened the jail doors, and the apostles walked out, unchained, unharmed, and unafraid. But the fire didn't stay in Jerusalem. It spread to Africa through the Ethiopian eunuch, baptized by Philip. It reached Damascus, where Saul, the fierce persecutor, was struck blind by a flash of divine light, only to rise 3 days later as Paul, a missionary to the world. One conversion sparked another. One miracle led to more. The world caught fire, not a fire that destroys, but a fire that transforms. That is the power of the resurrection. It wasn't just that a man came back to life. It was that life itself was permanently changed. Mel Gibson once said, "The resurrection is not just an event. It's the turning point of the cosmos." And he's right. What do you think about what Mel Gibson reveals about the resurrection? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories.